we are ranking the top tier MBTs in a tier list, S rank to E rank. I've picked 2 MBTs from every nation and we're ranking them best to worst. And I think the best idea is if we start with one S tier contender, like total S tier where it's completely obvious, and one E tier contender, so you know we have an upper and a lower limit. I would pick the T80BVM as our S tier contender, you know, the first S tier tank. I don't think there's a lot to discuss there because it is simply one of the most used tanks because it's so good. You know, you have really good armor, you have a decent round, you have really good mobility, and I just think it's overall a really good tank. Gun depression. Yeah, gun depression is the only downside of this tank. I'm just thinking if a tank only has one downside, that can make it S tier. I don't think it should be A tier. It is, in my opinion, probably the strongest MBT, together maybe with the 1-2s, but we can discuss this. The depression is non-existent though. And reverse gear. The T80BVM actually has a better reverse gear than the T72s and stuff, so it gets an upgraded reverse gear. Gun depression may be the only downside, but it's a huge one. I agree with you, but like most War Thunder maps are quite flat. Like especially when you look at all these city maps, they're usually like, you know, flat. You don't need a lot of depression there. I don't know if I would put the T80BVM at an A tier. Like, it's the only downside of the tank. Everything else is insane. Mobility wise, it's probably the best tank, or second best if you look at the ZTZ99A maybe. So E tier, I would probably pick the original Ariete, simply because it's not particularly maneuverable. It doesn't have a lot of armor. I mean, it doesn't have any armor. The lower front plate is 70mm, so like everyone can. Oh wait, Mighty Quinn, thanks for the gifted subs, man, and welcome to the stream. So back to topic. I would say the Ariete is definitely the E tier tank. Is anybody here disagreeing with me? I think the Ariete, the original Ariete, is definitely an E tier tank. It has no armor. The extra turret armor that you get as a modification kind of helps. It only against like lower tier missiles. Like everything at its own BR will just low pen it at every point. I've also opened up War Thunder just to show you what I mean. Yes, see, we switched over to War Thunder. This is the Ariete AMW, we don't want that. I'm talking about this Ariete here. And I think the biggest downsides are the armor, which is a very big downside. Okay, so let's look at, actually we can stay here. The M53 at 500 meters. There is really no point where you are protected. And now I want to show you what I mean when I say this is really the worst tank. We go to Germany. Rank 2. What do we take? Panzer 4G? Panzer 4G at 500 meters. Let's get closer. Let's get 100 meters. A Panzer 4G. And I assure you, this will nuke the tank. It's actually so sad. You should, if you have a Panzer 4 and you're facing an Ariete, you shouldn't shoot the driver because he will eat all the spawning. Shoot here. This ammo rack will be mostly empty, so your spawn will just hit the other ammo rack and all the people in the turret. So yeah, that's why I'm saying this tank has a lot of issues. Okay, so E tier. We have an upper limit, we have a lower limit. I think we're good here. Do we just rank one tank from each nation first? I think that's a good way to go. So let's just start at the top here. This is the Challenger 2E. It's basically a Challenger 2, but with an upgraded engine, which I think is pretty decent. You know, it fixes some issues of the Challenger 2 tank, which is, you know, mainly the mobility, because the mobility is really terrible. What do you guys think about a B tier? I know it has some issues. The upper front plate can still, the lower front plate can still be penned, but like the turret is really thick. You have an okay-ish round, you have decent thermals, and you have that upgraded engine that, you know, puts you ahead of other Challenger tanks. Fair? Okay. Okay, good that we agree. I think, wait, give me a second here, wait. We just do something funny. Where is my... Yes, okay, we will paint the thing. See? It's gone. No more E. And then we go F. And I make it in a really big manner. Is that better? Okay, so the Ariete just got down tiered to F tier. A ZTZ99A. In my opinion, it plays very similarly to how you would play the T80BVM and has very similar armor. The only downside really, in my opinion, is that you have a much bigger lower front plate and a pretty weak gun breech, which will, you know, make people shoot out your gun breech all the time. Like, that was my main complaint when I was playing China, that people always shoot out my gun breech. I would put it at A tier. This is really, really mobile. It's B tier? Why B tier, guys? I need some opinions here. It plays basically the same as the BVM, but has a pretty big lower front plate weak spot. But it also has laser warning systems. And it gets a really good reverse. Guys, don't forget the reverse speed of that thing. Here, give me a second. Let's look at it in game, you know. If we are not sure about something, we'll just look at it in game. We go here, China ZTZ99A, test drive. Actually, no, let's go into customization first, just to show you what I mean here. The reverse gear is actually really good. 34 kilometers per hour, and you will reach that fast. The depression is lacking less horsepower than BV. It has 1500 horsepower, it has more horsepower than the BVM, but it also weighs more. Let's go into the test drive. Also, another good thing, it has a proxy fuse round. You will not oftentimes use it, but like, turret rotation is slow. No, look at this turret rotation, it's actually really good. The gun depression and like, you know, making the gun go up and down is kind of not too fast. But look, we're already going 50, and it's actually a really fast tank. It's not like the original ZTZ99s. It's actually a completely different tank in my opinion. And now the reverse gear instantly at 34 kilometers per hour. Another good upside is definitely the proxy fuse rounds have helped me quite a bit. You have a laser warning system, and one cool thing, you will not often have this save you, but there is ERA on top of the turret, so it can save you from top attack missiles like TOW2Bs. There aren't a lot of TOW2Bs at top tier, but it can save you there. And generally, the upper front plate and the turret are basically impenetrable like on a T80 BVM. And it's the same weird autoloader that will get you killed from the side. Yeah, in my opinion, it is a strong A. It is a really good tank. So let's say we put it A. Okay, A tier. Okay, next tank. What do you guys want? That's not a weird autoloader, that's the Russian and Chinese space program. So Type 10, A tier you guys say. Type 10B, I would also put it at B tier. So the thing about the Type 10 is you have pretty good mobility, not as good as the 99A or the BVM, but pretty good mobility. You have a really good round and the 4-second autoloader. But now I will show you the biggest downside of the Type 10 and why I think it should be B tier. Okay, so we have okay-ish armor. It's just very spotty. The lower front plate is also not armored at all. So that's like a pretty thin plate here that you can go through. The turret is also very spotty with armor. You can go through the pretty big breach here. Let's just do some protection analysis. Let's just have it phase Type 10 round at 500 meters. Yeah, so that's a Type 10 round from the front against the Type 10. There's obviously some weird spots like here where, you know, you might be able to sometimes bounce something, but oh my god, I didn't expect it to just turn green like this. Yeah, so that's an issue. Another bigger issue, in my opinion, the biggest issue of this tank is the gun handling. It is, as far as I know, straight up the same gun handling as the Type 90. So elevating and depressing the gun takes ages. It's really slow. And the turret rotation is also not that fast. But you still have that 4-second reload, which is insane. Also, another thing. Oh, I don't have the buttons bound for it. Let me show you. It's, as far as I know, the only MBT to have suspension controls. Increased clearance. So you do have suspension control. You can make yourself flat and you can make yourself be really tall, which is very situational but can be helpful. So this is in very tall mode. So in my opinion, I think it's definitely not an S tier. We're pretty far from an S tier in my opinion. I'm still undecided between A tier and B tier. I would put it at B probably, if nobody disagrees. Yeah, B tier. I think it's really the reload that saves it. Let's just move it here. We will decide later once we have more A and B contenders to compare to, okay? So somebody wanted me to rank Leopard. We go with the 2A6 first. Let's just go with the 2A6 first here. Automatic S, yeah, I would put the 2A6 at S tier too. I think it's a really, really solid tank. The only lackluster part is like the armor on the hull. But the turret is basically impenetrable, unless you shoot for the gun breach. You have the best round in the game. You have pretty decent mobility. You have good thermals, except for the gunner thermal. That's quite shitty. But let's just put it S tier here. Okay, next one up, the Leclerc. Let's just go with the Azure first. Leclerc Azure, that's the one with the extra side armor. I personally think it's a B tier. C tier? Straight in F tier. Dedo, you can't just hate the French people. I'm not sure with the Leclerc. It has some strengths, like the round is pretty high velocity, and the turret is decently armored, but the hull is just weak everywhere. But on the flip side, you have good mobility, but you don't get commander thermals. I don't even know if that thing gets a commander sight. You know what? Let's check. Oh, it gets a commander optic. Okay, that's good, but it doesn't get commander thermals. The side armor, in my opinion, is actually a downgrade because it just weighs you down, just makes you heavier, and it doesn't really protect you against anything. Like, look at the protection analysis here. The only thing it can really protect you against is like heat rounds, but nobody really uses heat, and it's only 600 millimeters of penetration, of protection, so anything that has missiles or just, you know, what are they called? Tandem heat stuff will just go straight through. Wait, let's look at China CTZ-99A. I know because it has a missile. Here we have a missile, and it goes straight through. No problem. 80 millimeters of protection against tandem rounds. You're not allowed to rank tanks you haven't unlocked. Dumdog, I have you know, I played basically every top tier tank. Look at it, it's spaded, I've played it. So like, I wouldn't rank these tanks if I've never played them, but like all of them are spaded because I either had test drives or I unlocked them. I'm not sure. It has strengths, it has weaknesses. I think the extra armor raise it down. I would put it at C tier. It doesn't mean you can't enjoy this tank. Like, I really enjoy playing the Leclerc, but I think these other tanks are better. STRV 122B. Honestly, in my opinion, it's a straight up S tier. Like, it gets less penetration than the Leopard, but way superior hull armor. It basically fixes the weak spot of the Leopard 2. So in my opinion, it's a straight up S tier. Easily S tier, yeah. Ever since it moved from DM33 to the M95 round, it's also very competitive in the penetration department. So in my opinion, straight up S tier. Okay, let's go to the next tank. We're missing Israel. Merkava Mark 4M. In my opinion, the Merkava Mark 4M is definitely not an S tier tank, and probably not even an A tier tank. Reason being, the turret is pretty weak, and the hull is weak anyway. You have armor, but like too little. It's just below the threshold where the armor would be useful, in my opinion. So I would probably put the Merkava Mark 4M at B tier. It has its strengths. It has the active protection system. It has some other cool features. Let me show you here. Let's go back to the game. It has a laser warning system, which is really helpful. It has these internal side armor panels here. Look at those. They're pretty thick for side armor, so that sometimes helps with survivability. You have the cool active protection system. The main problem is just that the protection is just not enough to really help you against anyone. The only trolley part is like this here, where you sometimes bounce, but like even if you bounce there, you'll just bounce into the hull, or you just go straight through like this. That's the main issue. The second issue is that it's just very heavy, so it's not very fast. It's 65 tons with a 1500 horsepower engine, so it's like 5 tons more than the Leopard 2 with the same engine power. It has a decent round though. 611 is a pretty decent round. You should get commander thermals as far as I know. Yeah, commander thermals, that's good. So I think it's a decent B tier. Let's just put it at B tier. Let's go with the SEP. So the SEP to S, I'm not sure about that. Honestly, I'm not sure. I might put it at A tier. I don't think it's better than the ZTZ-99A for some reasons. Let me show you here. Okay, so let's look at the strengths of this tank. You get M829A2, second best round in my opinion. So that's really good. You get a proxy fuse heat shell, which is pretty helpful against helicopters. You get decent mobility, kind of. The problem that I see is that the Tusk armor just weighs you down by how many tons? 3.2 tons. So I would personally probably take it off because I don't need the side armor. Like that ERA, okay, it looks cool, I guess. And it kind of helps against heat rounds, but it's the same as with the Azure. Any missile will just go straight through, or any tandem heat charge will just go straight through. And let's look at the frontal protection. M829A2 protection map. You have a lot of weak spots. You know, the lower front plate, as the same as every NATO tank, I guess. It will just go straight through. But it doesn't necessarily kill you unless you get a really unlucky positioning here like this. you can still shoot back with your commander. So there is some survivability, but I personally wouldn't put it S tier, simply because if we look at what S tier is offering, we have a Leopard 2, but with way stronger hull, so it fixes the hull weak spot. A Leopard 2 with an even better round, and the T80 BVM, which is just overall probably the most armored MBT, while also having a very good mobility and a very good round. Okay, you know what? Maybe my judgment was wrong. Let's move the Sept to S tier then. I think it's not too much different from the Leopard, and it gets better thermals now. So let's move it to S tier. Yeah, I think it's pretty similar to the 2A6 and how it plays. They have the same gun depression. They have the same basically impenetrable turret. They come with similar mobility if you take off the side armor kit on the Sept, and they both have the lower front plate weak spot, or generally hull weak spot, and the rounds are very similar. Let's just keep it S tier. I think it's fair. So that's every nation. We have one MBT from every nation. So somebody wanted to get Italians done first. So we're looking at the Ariete AMV. In case nobody has ever heard of the Ariete AMV here, which is very likely because you don't see this tank often. You just don't see Italy players very often. It's basically the base Ariete. It doesn't get the extra turret armor, which doesn't really matter because it doesn't really offer any protection. But what it has is 1500 horsepower. It has an upgraded engine over the base Ariete that only gets 1300, and it's pretty lightweight. You get the same horsepower as a Leopard 2, but weigh like around 5 tons less. So if we look at it like this, it's basically just the upgraded base Ariete. It's functionally the same, just a bit faster. And if we look at C tier, it's kind of a harder decision, but in my opinion, the Leclercs have a better round simply because it's higher velocity. It has a bit less penetration, but it's higher velocity, so it's easier to hit targets at range, and you have much better turret and similar mobility. The Leclerc is really fast for what it is. I think it fits good at D. It's not F tier. It's a sizable upgrade over the original Ariete with that better engine here, but I also don't think it can compete with the Leclerc, even though that's just the Azure version, so the worst version. I think it's a D tier. Leopard 2 PSO. In my opinion, pretty cool addition, pretty unique, but definitely not S tier in my opinion, because okay, I'll show why. On first glance, it looks like it fixes the hull weak spot that the Leopard 2A6 has, and it kind of does partially. You get these composite screens on top of here, which are, I believe, the same thickness as the composite screens on the 122s. Yeah, they are the same composite screens basically, but you don't get this part up here. This 100mm composite screen on your weakest spot can really help your survivability, and you don't get that on the Leopard 2 PSO. So this front part of the hull is still very, 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 very vulnerable. I think it's just an A tier tank. You still get the M53. You get a new time-fused high explosive shell that I will never use. It's very, very situational. And you have this side armor package that makes you much, much heavier. You're like 8 tons heavier than the base Leopard 2A6, so you will be slower by quite a bit. Although I just see that upside is you get a remote controlled 50 cal, which is pretty cool. I would put it at A tier. Get a better engine, but it's only slightly better and you gain 8 tons. It will definitely still hinder you. Okay, let's put it A tier. I think it's still a downgrade over the Leopard 2A6. I would probably take the Leopard 2A6 over this thing, and I would definitely take the 122 over this thing. Let's go. ZTZ 99A. No, actually not. It has a different name now, WZ1001 LCT. In short, it's basically a ZTZ 99A with a long cannon, actually the longest MBT cannon in the game, and some slightly different armor layout. I honestly would put it up at S tier because now it kind of matches the T80 BVM in everything, and it still has the long cannon. Let me show you here in game. It is the longest MBT cannon in the game. It's actually huge. It's like a couple centimeters longer than the A55 on the Leopard. You see, it doesn't have the ERA layout on the turret anymore, like on top of the turret. But look at this projectile speed. 1810 meters per second. It is the fastest APFSDS round in the game. So it's basically a railgun. And it still has, the cool features like laser warning system, the proxy fuse high explosive round, the really good mobility, and basically an impenetrable turret here and impenetrable upper front plate. Our S tier line is really getting filled. Do whatever the other Russian one is. Okay, we are going to do the T72B3. In my opinion, it's either a B tier or an A tier. you still have really good armor like the T80 BVM. You still have, you know, the really good turret, the really good upper front plate. But what you lack is the reverse speed and in general the mobility of the T80 BVM. So I'm undecided whether I want it at B tier because it gets one shot pretty easily and if you hit the ammo, or A tier. Probably B tier. It is a sizable downgrade to the T80 BVM. I'm pretty sure I want to put the Type 10 at... Ah, it's so hard. Okay, let's put it at A tier, despite all the drawbacks. If you are someone who can consistently shoot first, it is a good A tier. Let's go with the Challenger here. This is the Challenger Black Knight, sadly without the black skin here. In my opinion, it is an A tier. Let me explain. It is a Challenger 2, so the mobility is not amazing, but the way that it increases mobility against other Challenger tanks is by shedding armor. You see, it looks very naked, and that's because the armor on the lower front plate, which was a weak spot anyway, is missing, and you just save weight. Look, it's what, 62.5 tons. If we look at the base Challenger, it's the same weight. If we look at the Challenger 2F, you save like 6.5 tons. Against the Challenger 2 TES, you save like 12.5 tons. So it gains mobility by just shedding some weight. But it also has an APS system. And in my opinion, it is the best APS system in the game currently. Iron Fist, right? Was it Iron Fist? I think it was Iron Fist. Active Protection System, Iron Fist, yeah. Simply because the threat velocity. It can intercept rounds that are going 1700 meters per second. So you will sometimes at range just have your Active Protection System intercept APFSDS rounds or heat rounds or similar things. I wouldn't put it S tier. I don't think it's an S tier. Simply because it's still not that mobile compared to things like the Leopard, and it still doesn't have that good of a round. So I would put it at A tier. It's a decent A tier. It's, in my opinion, it's better than the Challenger 2E, simply because of the Active Protection System, which is really, really strong. We go for, what do we go for? Probably the Leclerc SXXI. Leclerc SXXI. Functionally almost the same as the Azure, just lighter because you don't have the side armor. And finally, Commander thermals. That's the biggest upgrade, but there's more to it. Let me show you in game. The main upgrades that are relevant to its performance in game: it weighs less than the Azure, it gets Commander thermal vision, and this weak spot here got, you know, got stronger. You got a new like armor plate on top of it. You see there's two 20mm plates stacked on top of this thing. If we look at the Azure, there's no plates stacked here, and I think that's a decent upgrade. I would say it is definitely a good upgrade over the Azure, so I wouldn't put it at C tier. I would probably put it B tier. Okay, Merkava Mark IV LIC, functionally the same as the Mark IV-M, at least how it works in game, but you don't get the Active Protection System, which in my opinion is a pretty big downgrade. I would put it at C tier. TKX, honestly, it shares the same strengths and weaknesses as the Type 10. The armor is still like irrelevant, so I would just put it at A tier. 4-second reload is still strong. Turret handling is still bad. Another STIV 1-2, straight S tier. It's functionally the same as the STIV 1-2B PLSS, except for the PLSS commander side, which is, you know, a cool addition, but like it doesn't really affect your gameplay that much. Last tank here, M1A2. I would put it at A tier. It's worse than the Sep in the one thing that matters, thermals, and it doesn't have that good round and gun velocity that the Leopard 2A6 has. So I would just put it at A tier. That's currently our list. I feel like we have too many S and A tiers, although I think some of the A tiers might be debatable if we move everything else down a notch. Look at this. This is kind of the final thing here. But yeah, that's the final tree after sorting it. I personally would probably move down some stuff like this. I mean, no, that's... actually, if we do it like this, kind of decompressing the tiers a bit. And moving the Type 10 here. Maybe even the Black Knight. I think that's my personal ranking from when I played it, but you know, you don't have to agree with everything here.